Good afternoon, class. My name is Blankson Irenchi, and I'm here to present on my research title, Is Education Associated with the Interest in Public Affairs? This research aimed to discover the association between education and the interest in public affairs in Ghana. So I picked this topic since I needed to know how the number of inhabitants in the country responds to the public affairs, and furthermore, whether it relies upon how higher you have achieved education. Basically, there are a lot of problems in the country which looks to be handled. So I believed it best to make my finding on whether people who accomplish education are ideal to have an interest in public affairs relationship, or even those with informal schooling. The presentation also tries to analyze my discoveries and what I have gained from the research. For the literature review, according to Ochin, an exploratory student on the knowledge gap can aid in public affairs among Africans. Thus, Kenyan on high SES are more knowledgeable about public affairs than those of the low SES. Interest in achieving higher education flourishes among public affairs graduate students, and according to Pelosi, the citizens presented a series of recommendations for how individuals, programs, and institutions might respond to public affairs in the form of education. I came up with some questions, some research questions, which was, what is your highest level of education, and how interested would you say you are in public affairs? For the methods, the data was collected from Afrobarometer Ghana, the round 6, in the year May 20th to June 10th, 2014. The sampling used was the 2010 Ghana Population and Housing Census, and it is a nationally representative among the citizens of Ghana who are 18 years and older. Subsets was also done just to narrow the research to Ghana, and the main sample size was 2,400. Now, measures. Educational respondent was measured by the question, what is your highest level of education? And the response categories included no formal schooling, informal schooling only, some primary schooling, primary school completed, intermediate school, or some secondary school or high school, secondary school or high school completed, post-secondary school qualification other than university. University completed, postgraduate, do not know, refuse to answer, and missing. Now, responses were then collapsed into two levels, the formal schooling and informal schooling. And the interest in public affairs respondent was measured by the question, how interested would you say you are in public affairs? The response category includes not at all interested, not very interested, somewhat interested, very interested, do not know, refuse to answer, and missing. This was later collapsed into two levels, very interested and not all that interested. For the inferential test, a chi-square of independence was used to test the association between education and the interest in public affairs. The null hypothesis, there is no association between the higher level of education and the people's interest in public affairs. Therefore, they are independent. And for the alternative hypothesis, there is an association between the higher level of education and the people's interest in public affairs. Hence, it is dependent. These are the bivariate graphs and results. So on the left side shows the proportion of respondents who have education, and on the graph you could tell that those who attain informal schooling have a very high proportion than those who attain formal schooling. And on the right side of the graph is the proportion of the respondents who are interested in public affairs. And yes, individuals who are very interested in public affairs have a higher proportion as compared to those who are not at all interested. So for the summary of the statistics, this was tested to know people who had formal and informal schooling and their response on interest in public affairs. And it was also tested to know the association between how interested the people would say they are with public affairs and education. And yes, we had some informal schooling to have a higher proportion as compared to the formal, and those who were interested in the public affairs too were proportionally higher than those who were not at all interested. So this clearly shows that the number of respondents who had a higher percentage for the informal schooling are interested in public affairs, and the low number of formal schooling are not all that interested in the public affairs. For the statistics and test and conclusion, the test square and the degree of freedom is 1.533 and 1 respectively, and the p with a p-value of 0.2157. Now, when examining the association between education and the interest in public affairs, the chi-square test of independence revealed that majority of individuals, which is the 64.51%, attained an informal schooling and yet have interest in public affairs. It also shows that individuals who attain formal schooling do not have any interest in public affairs, and per the results, the x square is equal to 1.533 with a degree of freedom to be 1 and a p-value of 0.217. With the discussion, what I learned from the project is that data being examined supports the claim that highest level of education or respondents in is dependent on whether people would say they are interested in public affairs or not. And if the p-value of 0.2157 can be greater than the significance level of 0.05, does that tell us the result is statistically significant? If yes, then the associations are significant. Now, there is no steady limitation in this work, but I propose that in additional research there should be a question like, is there an effect in the long run for making free policies, and could it be related to the growth of the nation? Thank you.